Do you believe there's a place in the world where falcons are issued passports just like people? It sounds unbelievable, but this isn't an exaggeration. It's Qatar. I used to think Qatar was just a scorching desert, a place with nothing but sand and sun. Until I looked a little closer at this tiny country and realized how wrong I was. Because hidden beneath those endless dunes is one of the most ambitious places on Earth. A place where billion-dollar cities rise from the desert almost overnight. A place where centuries-old traditions still live, right next to technologies from the future. But what truly makes Qatar different isn't just its wealth. It's how they balance preserving the past while building the future. And in today's journey, we're going to explore a very different side of Qatar, not the polished version you see on social media, but a Qatar that's more real, more layered, and sometimes completely unexpected. From ancient markets where time seems to stand still, to futuristic cities designed to survive beyond the age of oil, and places where nature and human ambition meet in ways that feel almost impossible. If you think you already understand the Middle East, this video might make you think again. Because sometimes the smallest places tell the biggest stories. And Qatar's story is just getting started. If you look at a map, Qatar is just a small peninsula sticking out into the Arabian Gulf, easy to overlook among much larger nations. But what's fascinating is, this tiny place holds a far bigger position than its size would suggest. Just a few decades ago, Qatar was a poor land where people survived mainly through fishing and pearl diving. Life wasn't easy. Extreme heat, scarce water, and a future that seemed limited by the desert surrounding them. Then came the turning point. Oil and natural gas were discovered beneath the ground. And instead of just extracting resources, Qatar did something different. They invested heavily in the future. Today, Qatar has one of the highest GDP per capita levels in the world. They spent over $200 billion to host the 2022 World Cup, a number that captured global attention. And here, falcons aren't just symbols. They have dedicated hospitals and even passports to travel with their owners. It may sound luxurious, but it's also how Qatar expresses its cultural values. What makes Qatar unique isn't just money, but how they use it to redefine themselves. In an environment where nature seems to work against human life, they still found a way to grow and thrive. And maybe the biggest lesson here is, circumstances don't define your future. How you respond to them does. But to truly understand this country, you have to look beyond the modern skyline and impressive numbers. Because Qatar isn't built on money alone, but on values that have existed for centuries. And those very values are still alive, right in the heart of one of the most modern countries in the world. Let's step into a place where the past and the future exist side by side, where you can truly feel the contrast between two completely different worlds. And that's where our next story begins. If you spend a day in Qatar, you'll quickly realize this place seems to exist in two worlds at once. In just a few minutes, you can move from glass and steel modern streets to traditional markets where time seems to slow down. At Souq Waqif, you don't just see history, you almost feel it. Narrow alleys, the scent of spices in the air, and soft conversations create a rhythm completely different from the outside world. And in a quiet corner of the market, you'll find falcons, a symbol of pride and tradition in Qatar. Here, falcons aren't just pets, they are a heritage passed down through generations. Some of these birds are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, cared for in specialized hospitals, and even fly business class with their owners. But step outside that market, and an entirely different world appears. Modern towers rise from the ground, wide roads stretch ahead, and life moves at a faster, future-driven pace. In Lusail City, everything feels designed for tomorrow. This is where new technologies, renewable energy, and smart urban planning come together to shape a city of the future. What's fascinating is these two worlds don't clash. They coexist, as if Qatar has found a way to preserve its past without slowing down its future. But not everything is as perfect as it seems. Most of Qatar's population is made up of expatriates, people who come here to work, build, and contribute to its rapid growth. Behind the shining buildings are the stories of millions of people, each with very different experiences. Some find opportunity, while others face challenges that few people ever see. And that's what makes Qatar complex, not just a wealthy nation, but a place of contrasts. Maybe the lesson here is, progress doesn't mean erasing the past, but learning how to live alongside it. And once you begin to understand that delicate balance, you start to see Qatar in a very different way. But there's still an important question left unanswered. Does everything you see, the luxury, the modernity, the perfection, truly reflect the whole story? Or is it only part of a much bigger picture? To understand that, we need to look deeper into what lies beneath the surface. When you look at Qatar through photos online, everything seems almost too perfect to be real. Man-made islands, luxury hotels, and streets so clean they almost feel untouched. At the Pearl Qatar, You can walk past European-style buildings, sit by a cafe overlooking a marina, and feel like you're in an entirely different world. Everything here is designed to feel perfect, an ideal version of life. But if you stay a little longer, you start to notice something interesting. Not everything feels as alive as it looks. Some areas feel quieter than expected, with beautiful streets that lack the usual energy of major cities. And that's because many places in Qatar are still in the process of being filled. Similarly, in Lusail City, you'll see wide boulevards and modern buildings, but they're not always as crowded as you might expect. It's a city built for the future, but that future is still taking shape. It's a city built for the future, but that future is still taking shape. And then there's another layer you almost never see in travel videos. It's the lives of the people behind all this development. Most of Qatar's population is made up of expatriates, engineers, workers, and laborers who helped build what you see today. For some, Qatar is an opportunity to change their lives. But for others, it can also be a challenging journey in a demanding environment. It's created through technology, energy, and a lot of effort that isn't always visible. Maybe that's the illusion of luxury, where everything looks effortless, but is actually built on something far more complex. This doesn't make Qatar any less impressive. It makes it more thought-provoking. Because once you understand what lies behind that beauty, you begin to see its true value. And the lesson here might be simple. Not everything beautiful is easy, and not everything perfect happens naturally. But if humans can create something like this in the middle of the desert, then the next question is, how did they actually do it? How does a place this harsh become livable? And the answer might lie in how Qatar learned to adapt to nature rather than fight it. And that's where our journey continues. When you move away from the glass towers and city lights, Qatar begins to tell a very different story. A story not about luxury, but about how humans learned to survive in a harsh environment. On the southern edge of the country, there's a place with almost no roads, no cities, just sand and wind. It's Khor al-Adaid, one of the rare places in the world where the sea meets the desert. To get here, you have to cross towering sand dunes like frozen waves, a journey that's both beautiful and intense. And when you stand there, watching still water reflect the sky in the middle of the desert, you understand why it's a UNESCO-recognized site. But what's fascinating is, Qatar doesn't just leave nature as it is. They've found ways to adapt and even redesign how humans live within it. At Oxygen Park, you'll find something that feels almost impossible, a cool green space in the middle of the desert heat. Walking paths built below ground, automated cooling systems, and environmental sensors create a place where people can truly breathe. It's not just a park, it's an idea. The idea that humans don't have to fight nature, but can learn to live with it. And you see that in places like Al Thakira mangroves, where greenery grows in salty, dry land. Ecosystems like this aren't just beautiful, they play a crucial role in environmental protection and balance. When you look at all of this, you start to realize Qatar's development isn't accidental. It's the result of understanding nature's limits and finding ways to work with it. Maybe the lesson here is, innovation isn't always about creating something entirely new. Sometimes it's about learning to adapt to what has always been there. But if Qatar can turn a desert into a livable place, then the next question is, how are they preparing for the future? Because what you see today might only be the beginning. To understand that, we need to look at what they're building for tomorrow. After seeing how Qatar exists in the present, you start to wonder, what are they building toward? Because here, everything feels built not just for today, but for decades ahead. In Lusail City, you can clearly feel that. Wide roads, smart transportation systems, and energy-efficient buildings, all designed for a world beyond oil. It's not just a new city, it's a statement. A statement that Qatar is preparing for a day when natural resources are no longer their greatest advantage. But Qatar's future isn't just about buildings or infrastructure. It's also about people and knowledge. At Education City, you'll see something very different from the usual image of the Middle East. It's a place where top global universities have campuses where students from around the world study and research together. New ideas are born here, from artificial intelligence to sustainable agriculture in desert environments. And when you look at spaces like Oxygen Park, you realize that future isn't just about technology, but also quality of life. Qatar is investing in something less visible, but far more lasting: influence. From sports to culture to education, they are gradually building their place on the global stage. To some, all of this might just look like a wealthy country spending its money. But when you look closer, it's a long-term strategy. A way to ensure their future doesn't depend on what lies beneath the ground. And maybe the biggest lesson here is, the future isn't something you wait for. It's something you actively build. Qatar may be a small country, but the way they think about the future is anything but small. And when you look back at this entire journey, from harsh deserts to cities of tomorrow, you begin to realize that Qatar isn't just transforming itself. They're challenging what we think a country can become. And maybe that's what makes this place truly unforgettable.
A place that doesn't just show you the future, but makes you rethink the present. And maybe, after all of this, you won't just leave with beautiful photos, but with an entirely new perspective on the world.